The carrier bearing, and this is the transmission down here, and it's got a half shaft and another U-joint here, and it comes down to this boot with a slip joint right here. But if you look, you want to make sure this is not completely gone. It's going to have some play. This carrier bearing is not gone out completely, but it's on its way out. But this is not going to cause that slip bump feel that you feel in the seat of your pants whenever you're braking or taking off. So what basically happens is when this rear end is loading up and is putting pressure on this drive shaft and it's wanting to push this away, and it can't because the spline, the grease and everything is dried out and probably maybe a little rust in there. So what we're going to do, we're going to disconnect the drive shaft from the rear end. We're going to mark our yoke, or yeah, it's just the pinion flange assembly to the yoke, and mark that so you'll be able to put it back where it came from. Just take you a pair of needle nose and spread your clamp open enough to just slide it back and just let it dangle here on the shaft. Alright, got that part done, easy peasy. So let's make our way back here to the differential, and let's start removing these 4 nuts, bolts. An impact wrench with a short, just a swivel extension will just about be your best friend here. So I've got all the bolts out except for one, and I'm going to leave it in there just to catch the drive shaft when I pop it loose. You don't want to hit here or here. You want to hit this yoke solid. See how it popped loose? So we'll just go ahead and rotate this around and remove that last bolt, and we'll get this drive shaft out of here. Carefully lower the drive shaft to the ground and just let it sit there. And we're going to slide this spline shaft backwards. And it's going in and out, but it's really stiff. It's got some grease on it, you can tell, but it's dry as a bone. And this is our culprit. It needs to be lubricated. I'm going to be using the Super Lube. It's the synthetic grease with Teflon, and you can get this anywhere. I think I bought this at Harbor Freight. Just run you a bead in several spots, and then just take your finger, and we're going to fill all the splines up with this stuff. If you buy the Ford grease, it's the same stuff. Wipe some in here on the female portion. You can actually take a toothbrush and get down in there real good with this stuff, with this grease. Alrighty guys, we got our male portion of our drive shaft lubed up and our female portions lubed up, so let's just go ahead and slide them back together. Be patient whenever you stab this drive shaft in. The tolerances are so close that the grease is actually making a seal in the splines here, so you'll have to burp this. So not much. Slip your boot back on, line up your score marks, and go ahead and tap the yoke back onto the pinion flange. Alright guys, we're going to torque our drive shaft bolts to 80 foot-pounds. That's good. Alrighty guys, we've got the hose clamp put back on, and we've got the bolts torqued down to where they need to be, and let's get this thing down off the jack stands and go for a test drive and see if we got rid of any of this slip bump that's been plaguing these Fords for a long time. I'm going to make a little bit of a stop, make sure there's nobody behind me. Alright, no pop. When that rear end settled down is when it would do it the most. Now if you just make a real light stop, say you're moving up through traffic and you inch up and you inch up, well, you're unloading that rear end, and whenever you take off is when it would make the bump again. So let's try it. Alright, no bump. We may be onto something here. Make another stop here. Alright. I'm going to come to a stop here, and I'm going to accelerate semi-hard. So far, so good.
It's Mower Medic 1 here. Hey, today I am working on a 2011 F150, and the customer states that she doesn't have on her blower motor and on the HVAC, she doesn't have 1, 2, or 3, but you can put it on high and it'll blow just fine. I said, well, we can fix that, and I ran into a debacle, and I want you to come along and I'll show you how I diagnosed it, and I got a new bad part. I'll show you what I had to do to fix it, and basically it's a 30-minute job has turned into 4 hours due to having to run the roads to go get a part for this thing. And it's real inconvenient for the customer and the technician. Whenever you buy a part, it should be new, but I'm going to show you the part that I got from Napa. It was questionable. You could tell that it had been installed before, and I think that somebody was dishonest and put their blown out part back in the box and took it back to Napa for a refund. So the first step in diagnosing anything electrical is I always check the fuses. This one just happens to be a little 40 amp for the blower motor, and it's right here, and this little fuse is good. And number 3 relay is the relay for the blower motor, and we'll take that out and I'll show you how I tested that. So we're going to go ahead and pull that relay out of there, and I'm going to put it in my little circuit tester here. This is just a normal 4-pin relay. We're going to stick it in this slot right here. And this little apparatus is pretty dadgum neat. You select your 4 or 5, put it on 4-pin, hit the test button. It's going to load this relay and actually make it work and actuate the relay. So let's go ahead and press it. we're good. Good is green, good to go. If the tester had shown red, that means your relay would be bad. And no bueno on that. So let's go ahead and put this back in. Only goes one way. So our relay and our fuse is good. Let's go inside and I'll show you what's going on. So right behind the glove box here, and you'll be able to see me reach up underneath, right here where my finger is what we call a blower motor resistor. And I'm going to take it out and I'm going to show it to you here. And I'm just going to plug it into the wiring harness. Now this is the one that I diagnosed to be bad. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Okay, the key is on. And here is the switch for the blower motor. As you can tell, nothing's running. Nothing in 2. Nothing in 3. When I put it to 4, it works fine. So let's unplug this one. I'll do this in real time so you don't think that I'm jacking with trying to make somebody look bad. Here is, and I'm going to caution you, don't run these without being installed. Okay, so here is the Napa one, and the part number on it is BR343, just in case you're wondering. But I want you to look at this. Can we see how that looks like it has been installed already? Now, I haven't installed this one yet. I just stuck it in on wiring harness just like I did a minute ago to see if it was going to work. But you can tell that the rubber has been squished. So let's go ahead, plug this Napa one in. And I'm going to reach right behind you here. I'm going to put it on, it's on 1 now. 2, 3, 4. Now, how aggravating is that to try to diagnose? Because you already diagnosed it to be the bad resistor and it didn't do you any good. So now you're chasing your tail because you're wondering, well, what in the heck now? Do I have a broke wire somewhere? No. But anyway, here is the newest one that I've got. I actually swallowed my pride and went down to the twilight zone, I mean the auto zone, and got a Duralast. Now watch what happens when I plug this one in. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Ain't that a something? Let's go ahead and get this one installed and let the customer know she's ready to rock and roll. All right, let's go ahead and install this one. Make sure you got it orientated the correct way. Just flip it around. I got it the wrong way. Just like that. Hope you can see that. And it's only held in with 2 little sheet metal screws, plastic screws, or plastite screws if you will. And the reason I say don't run this very long, because you could overheat that resistor in short order. Just plug it in long enough to run it through your cycles or your speeds. And your best friend here is going to be just a little electric ratchet.
And we're going to send those screws home and don't over tighten them. I'm just going to run my ratchet real slow. Plenty tight. So let's just go ahead and reinstall the connector. Just like that. She should be good to go. Just reinstall your glove box. There's nothing to take off. You just got two little rubber stoppers, one here and one there. Just bend it in just a little bit and just let it go home. Put everything back in the glove box and we'll test it and see how it turns out. Alrighty, we got our speeds back. That's what the customer wanted. Today we are working on a 2011 F150. I've got my power probe set up here, and the issue is the left rear door ajar light won't turn off. I've already removed the door panel so that we can get in here to the switch. Here is your lock switch, and your wiring harness plugs into this, and there's a sensor in there to when you shut the door, it's a real simple switch, open or closed. It's a normally open switch, but when you close the door, it completes the circuit, and then it turns the light off on the dash when you close the door. Alright, so here is the plug that plugs into the lock module or the door latch. This is what controls the light on the dash. It tells you the door's open, and it's also the power and grounds to the actual locking of the truck. So what we're going to do, we're going to take my voltmeter, get my power probe here, and on the solid green wire we should be getting around 10.8-ish volts. We're actually at 11.5. That's good. The battery's good and hot on the truck. So about 12 volts, 10 to 12 volts. And what we want to look for is ground on the the black with the purple tracer. And we're not getting anything. I'm going to see if we have ground for the lock. Harness, and that one's a blank one. Two blank ones. 1, 2. Okay, so if we take the green wire and we complete that circuit. Alrighty, to diagnose this, what we're going to do, we're actually going to ground out the power side of this circuit. Since it's just a simple switch activated circuit, we should be able to rule out having to replace a lock module if the switch inside is good. So what we're going to do, we're going to find our wire that has the 10 volts, which is the green one, second one from over. We got about 11 volts. Now I'm going to hit my power probe to ground, and our light indicator should go off. So the issue is that we probably, more than likely, have a ground. Well, I know it's a ground issue because we're grounding the wire, the harness of the truck. We're forcing ground on and completing the circuit and making it work. So there's got to be a break in a wire. There's got to be a ground wire that's broken.
it doesn't matter if a ground wire is chafed, because if a ground wire chafes against the body, it's not going to do anything. It may cause some radio interference on down the road, but we're actually talking about a broken wire. I guarantee you that that's what we're going to find. Let's dig just a little bit deeper on this thing. So let's go ahead and remove this rubber boot between the pillar and the door, excuse me. And what you want to do, you just want to look for some chafed wires or possibly broken wires. But I kind of jumped ahead here, but I want to show you this is where we were on our ground issue. I'm not getting ground on my black and purple wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this wiring harness all the way up. All the way up. And then we're going to find the purple and, the black and purple wire here. And I'm going to probe it at this point and see if we have ground up to here. And we do. So, from here to the end of the connector, there is a broken wire somewhere. Let's go ahead and snake this rubber boot back some. You can. Try not to pull any wires into. Oh wow, look at that. There's a couple of wires right in this area, right in the center where this door pivots whenever you open and close it. The yellow power wire for the windows, the insulation is broke there. We've got some insulation broke here on the two speaker wires. Just keep, uh-oh. Look at there. There's our black and purple wire. It's completely broken in two. There's our issue. Alrighty, I'm going to use a solder and seal butt connect on this repair. What it does, it's got a low temperature solder, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my heat gun to high and let it heat up. And we're going to melt that solder. You'll see it drop in here in just a second. Right there. Go ahead and we're going to finish off the heat shrink. And that's as good as it needs to get right there. Now let's re-verify that we're getting ground to our and through our connector. Black with purple stripe. Good there. And we're still getting power to the power wire. So let's just go ahead and hook this up momentarily before we put all this back together. So let's go ahead and hook up our wire to the lock module. Okay, we have our left rear door ajar on, illuminated. The message center says its door is open, and it is. So let's simulate closing the door. I'm just going to put a screwdriver in here and I'm going to close it onto the screwdriver, and let's just see if our message goes away. So I'm going to pretend I'm shutting the door. Alright, we got it. So I'm going to reopen the door and the message should come back on. opening the door now. So our door is ajar. So we have diagnosed and fixed the issue. So what we're going to do, I got to put all the door panels and stuff back on, put the wiring harness back in the door, and I'll catch you when I get all that done. Alright, so I've made my repairs to those wires and we're good to go there. Well, but what the reason those wires do what they do is because here is the pillar of the truck, and here's the door, and here is the wiring harness going through this rubber grommet, and every time you open the door it's bending these wires, and it's just not a good design. I think it would work better if the wires were more supple. You know, maybe have a little bit more of an elastic sheathing over the wires. The wires that came through here were really hard. The insulation was very stiff, and it's probably not the best. I don't want to say it's the wrong wire, but in my opinion it needs to be a more of a giving style wire. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this wiring harness fed through the door and hooked back up to the speaker and the lock module and the window regulator motor, and we'll get the door panel put back on it. We've got the wiring harness put back, all the little clips put back where they go. So what we're going to do, we're just going to operate the window and just make sure none of your wires are rubbing the window or the regulator. Looks good. Alright, let's see what happens when we open the door that had the issue. Alright, we got her fixed. Thank goodness. You can tell right here is about where those wires were broken and chafed that I fixed. It's a pretty good transition from open to close. It's inevitable that it's going to probably happen on the other doors as well. So I'll just tell the customer to keep an eye on that. If the windows stop going up and down, or they get another error message for another door ajar, then we know that's the first thing we need to look at is the wiring harness. Then you'll recognize this 2011 F-150. We have done some work on this truck in the past. We've done the slip bump drive shaft fix. Error code that comes up on the inside on the dash whenever you open the door and you shut the door, it still says the door's open. We have done that repair as well. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you what's going on with it today. Let's go ahead and get the hood popped. Now this is the 2011 F-150 with the 5-liter motor. This also will work on a 3.7, the V6, and the 3.5 EcoBoost. It's the same kind of issue that we're having. We're having a small coolant leak, and this is super common. Right here at the degauss bottle, you have a couple lines coming out, one here and then one here, but the main one is the big coolant line. As you can tell, we're just a little bit wet right there, and I've replaced this hose in the past hoping that that would eliminate the coolant leak, and it did not. So what do we have to do? We're going to have to replace the degauss bottle. The hose has just got a quick connect, and it's just not sealing up like it's supposed to. Alrighty, we're going to start by removing the air induction system. Real simple, 8mm or 5/16 clamps on the throttle body. Apologize for the lawnmower noise in the background. Just loosen those up. There's one here. Go ahead and start sliding everything off. We're gonna pop it off of the throttle body here. We're gonna remove our hose from the PCV, and then remove the hose from the air box. I'm just gonna leave that one last vapor hose or oh, they call it a evap line. I'm going to leave it hooked up, and we're just going to let the manifold just kind of rest there on top of the engine. That'll give us plenty of room to get to the degauss bottle and then the hose right here. We need to remove the mass airflow sensor connector, and there's going to be just a little red slide tab under here. Just pull it rearwards and just slide the connector off. Pop the clips off of the air filter box, and we're going to raise it up and just get it completely out of the way and remove the air filter. Uh-oh, look here. Whoever serviced this air filter last did not do it correctly. They've got that rubber pinched, and that thing could be sucking dirt. So I'm going to let my customer know that it needs a new air filter because it's been compromised. Look at there, how that damaged that is from putting it in wrong. Gotta pay attention to details, folks. Gotta pay attention to details when you're working on especially customers' vehicles. Now here is the hose in question, and it just runs to the thermostat, or the water pump, or I guess it is a thermostat housing right here. So we need to remove this clamp here, put a suitable catch can underneath the vehicle to catch any coolant that may run out. Just get you some pliers, or if you have the clamp tool, it works great too. But we're just going to slide this clamp back enough to clear the hose, and then we're going to give it a twist to break it free. Shouldn't be that hard. I just replaced this hose maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. Slowly pull it off, and there will be a little bit of spillage, but not much. Had just a little bit of pressure on it, and it's been sitting here for over an hour. Let's go ahead and remove the two clamps on the bottle itself. There's one here. And there's one right here. Carefully, well, I say carefully, we're actually replacing this bottle, so if you happen to snap off a connector, it really doesn't matter. But if you're not replacing this bottle, then be super careful not to snap these connectors off, because it will happen. And as you can tell, our catch bottle, or the degauss bottle, didn't have anything in it. The only thing that is draining out is out of the top of the motor here. Go ahead and remove the hood present switch. Just so we can get better access to the bolts. Just lay it over there. We need to get to this bolt, and we need to get to this bolt right here. Once you get these 2 bolts loose and there's one rubber mount below. Just pull it straight up and the whole air box and degauss bottle should come right out. There's only a couple things you'll have to swap over from the old box. You'll have to swap over the air horn here. You just take your screwdriver and you pop that out, and your rubber grommets here, one here, one here. You'll swap those over to that, and then we'll install the little air horn right there. Alrighty guys, so before we go back in with the new bottle, I'm going to do just a little bit of prep work here. I'm going to get me some silicone paste. I'm just going to lubricate these grommets here. This will aid in installing this bottle a whole ton easier. Alright, let's get this new one set in place. It does come with a new hose, so you can discard the one here on the radiator. Sets right down in those grommets. Now we can replace our bolts. Alright, it's almost done. We got to hook up one hose. We need to hook up the main hose, but let me show you what you need to do to this to make your day easier. We're going to use our silicone paste again, and as we can tell, here's the old hose. And I want to show you the old bottle, and if the camera can pick it up of why this is not sealing. I'm going to try to zoom in. Is that this plastic connector is literally chipping away, and if you wipe it, that plastic comes off on your fingers. It's just deteriorated. No good. You gotta replace it or it's gonna leak. Get your new hose and just lubricate that O-ring in there with this silicone grease real good. Go liberal. You don't want it to cut that O-ring as you slide it on the degauss bottle. Alright, let's go ahead and get the new connector or the new hose slid on to the bottle here, and then push it on until it clicks, and that's all you got to do. Slide your hose on all the way till it stops, and then tighten your clamp. Right there ought to do it. Alrighty guys, you got to be super careful when you put these filters in. They'll only go in one way. This filter is not square, so if you put it in the right way, it fits the air filter base really well. So we're going to put this new filter in here and get this all buttoned back up, and we'll fill it full of coolant, give it a crank, and check for leaks. Alright guys, we got everything buttoned back together. We are running. We got the coolant topped off, and we are leak free. Alright, so I'm going to give it a start. And as you can tell, our tachometer is moving, which means that we are registering for the crank sensor. Which probably means that we are okay on the ignition side of this whole debacle. Okay, so I've got my scanner hooked up. We're just going to see what's going on here. I'm going ahead and we're going to illuminate all of the fuel pump portions of the scanner. Let's see if we can go to OK. And immediately we show that, of course, the fuel pump is off because it's not running. It shows that we have an error on the fuel pump circuit. So let's crank it and see if that changes. Somewhere our fuel pump has a fault, whether it be a relay or maybe a corroded wire to the pump, could be anything. But I'm gonna go straight to the issue on this truck, and like I said, this is a very common issue for this series of, like I said, 09 to 14-ish F150s. One of the most common issue with a crank no start on one of these trucks is fuse number 27. If you will look right underneath here, pop this fuse panel up, and if we look, number 27 is right here, which is the 20 amp fuel pump relay fuel pump fuse. And let me get a closer view of that, if it will focus for me. As you can tell, that fuse, we've got a little bit of looks like we got a little burnage right here. So let's pull this number 27 fuse out of here and see what it looks like. Oh wow, yeah, check that out. The whole end of that, the whole one side of that fuse is just completely burnt off. So guess what? That means that down in here, that terminal is probably going to be overheated and crispy as a Rice Krispie treat. I'm telling you what. Could you shove a new fuse in there? Maybe, and get by with it for a little while until it got hot and melted another fuse, and you keep repeating that process over and over, and you're going to end up melting out where that fuse goes. However, Ford has a fix for this, to where it relocates this little puny 20 amp to the number 70 slot right here, which is going to have the more robust 20 amp square fuse. And guys, I'm going to show you how to perform this task. It's not going to be, you know, super easy, but it's not so much that the average professional homeowner couldn't perform this. So let's go ahead. First thing we got to do, disconnect the battery, and we're going to have to remove this fuse block up out of the way so that we can get to underneath where this number 27 fuse actually goes. Battery's disconnected. Now we can loosen up the power to the distribution block here. That dude was just barely finger tight. And just lift your wires up out of there. We'll give these a good cleaning before we put it back on there. Now around this block is going to be a couple of tabs that you're going to have to pull back, and this whole block will just slide up off of these posts. There's 1, 2, and a couple back here. So let's go ahead and get those slid up off of those posts. Where this main wire loom hooks to this box. Now it's inevitable, you're probably going to break this little piece of plastic that holds that on there, but that's, sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. Just carefully pry this up, and if you do break it off, it's not the end of the world. You can just zip tie that little dude right back on there. Ha! I got lucky and didn't break that one. We can reuse that one, no problem. So now we need to just get our box to where we can pretty much flip that dude over. Alright, so we got this back far enough to where we can get to the wires on here. Now this number 27 fuse is this number, it's a 3.0 wire, is what they call it. It's the blue and with the red stripe right here. And what Ford says to do is to basically go up in here and just snip this wire off. You're going to completely snip it off from the terminal block up here. So that's what we're going to do next, and then we'll have enough wire out here to make our repair. Alright, so now we've got the wire pulled out here where we can work on it. Don't be pulling on too much stuff. You don't want to knock anything loose under there. So we're going to strip that back about a half an inch. Here is the kit from Ford itself. I wouldn't go any other way than OEM on this little kit. The part number is EL3Z-14293-A, and I'll put links in the description where you can get a hold of one of these kits yourself. And let's get this going. Get this back to the customer ASAP. So what this kit includes is a pigtail to relocate that mini fuse to the more robust, even though this is still a 20 amp, and it comes with another slide terminal that we're going to slide up in to the number 70 slot, to where now we have a whole lot more surface area to make contact for our fuel pump circuit fuse. To make this repair, I'm just going to use one of my shrink and solder connections. Really neat. I did a video on these before. You slide your wires up in here. It's got a ring of solder, and once you start heating this up with your heat gun, it bloop, makes that solder fall into the wires, and it just makes a good solid connection, waterproof connection. And then when we're done, we'll slide the Ford supplied heat shrink tubing over that. Now we've got our repair made. We're just going to lightly tuck it to where it's not pinching, and then we're going to take our connector and we're going to slide it up underneath to this number 70 slot, and once you hear it click in, then you know you're good to go. There it went. barely faint, but it did click in. Just like that. It looks good. Put our battery cable back on. And then lastly, we'll hook up our new 20 amp fuse. And then on the inside of the box here, you'll want to put this sticker so that the next mechanic will know that this conversion has been done. Just gonna lay it right in the bottom here. You see that? Fuse 70. Alright, so if we were successful, it should fire right up. Now the instructions say the wire that you snipped off under there, you're going to have, you know, some sticking down, and it says to put a piece of heat shrink on that and basically just cap it off. I didn't do that. I just went ahead and went up in there with my pliers farther and I snipped it off flush with the bottom of the box. Not going to hurt nothing. It's to each his own. If you want to put the heat shrink on there, you can. The fuse relocated to a more robust, I keep wanting to say a stronger fuse, but it's not a stronger fuse, it's just a 20 amp. But the surface area where that fuse plugs down in is our issue. It's creating heat, you know, and because of a bad connection, because the fuse is so small and it's got a pretty big wire going to it, it's, you know, it uses quite a bit. It's more amperage than you think. It's not enough amperage to pop that little bitty fuse. But anyway, hey, we got this little F150 going one more time, and if this content helped you out, give me a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. And while you're there doing that, go ahead and click that heart and click that bell so that you get all of my new videos.